specialist. Part of doing my employee group benefit plan is to associate with the right carriers, with the right programs, to put the right plans in place for clients. I'm so pleased to have both Chris and Rod from SHifT today to talk the leadership program. Like I said, I have taken the program in August, completely fell in love with it. Fantastic. It is really a game changer for working with people in a leadership position, making sure that your teams are focused. I can't say enough about it. So now we're going to host it on Tuesday, November 5th, Tuesday, November 3rd, and Thursday, November 5th. And it's a great opportunity for people to be able to take a program that normally costs, Rod's about $1,600 per person.
Yeah, it's $15.95 for the live session. The virtual is $14.95, and that's the standard seat cost for attending. And that's for the 3 modules, the 3 exams, and the actual certification that you would get from the Faculty of Health Sciences from Queens.
Yep. We're sponsoring it through MP Benefits, and we're doing it for $300 per participant. Yes. Rod, what's the number one on taking this leadership program? What does it mean?
Just take a step back and kind of do a little summary over the last 6 months. We've all had an incredible ride, incredible experience, and literally we have not had such a disruption in the workforce since the start of the Industrial Revolution, almost 300 years ago. So what's happened is it's affected a variety of different things economically and socially, of course, but where the real impact is on the mental health side of things. So with SHifT, we have been involved in finding well-being to support productivity for employees since the late 60s. And one of the things, and we've talked about this many times, Lori, we're big on finding data. We're big on actually getting specific. So we have something called a mental health index that we do once a year. It studies thousands of Canadians. Actually, we do it on continents around the world because we're global, but I'll focus on Canada today. So we do the mental health index every year, and that gives us an actual guide of what's going on in the mind of Canadians. So because of COVID, we shifted gears and we started doing it monthly. So starting in March, we started doing the mental health index, comparing it to the scoring in 2019. So I wanted to share with everyone on the call today some of those stats, because that really is the foundation of where we're moving from. And then we'll get into the manager dynamic. So a few things I wanted to share with you. We asked just recently, and this is just a couple of days old, I get an update every week on operationally globally. So we asked 324,000 people calling into our EAP program, is this call based on a COVID-related issue? Now, keeping in mind, that word did not exist until 6 months ago. 20% of those 324,000 people are specifically calling in about COVID. So that's a huge number. And we had some interesting things too at our call centers, that we had a paralysis from March to the middle of August. Our call volumes dropped. So people like the workplace leaders, the HR teams, and brokers like Lori were needing help, and we were supporting them. But the actual employees that needed help, they didn't call in for that window of time from March till about mid-August. And then things started skyrocketing again. We actually hired 25% more clinical counselors in August globally that work for our organization to manage that incredible amount of activity. So back to the mental health index, I want to share with you the top 5 things that are coming up with mental health that we've seen with Canadians. The number one thing is stress. The second is anxiety. The third is workplace stress. Number 4 is depression. And number 5 is relationships. So those are at the top of the list of challenges in the mental health index. And I also cross-reference it to the hundreds of thousands of folks that call in for help into our call centers, and they meet perfectly. That's exactly what we're seeing. So the data of the surveys and that is matching. So we know that employees are struggling and having challenges on any given day. If we go back a year ago, or organizations with mental health challenges with employees is about 35 to 40%. Today, it's between 75 and 80%. Now, what that does is you've got this challenge, but it puts strain on the management layer. Why? Because you need new tools, right? I was a manager for years. I went to business school, studied management, and it's a difficult job. It's very, just the normal route of managing is difficult. But now you've got to work on the safety protocols. You've got to work on the issues with isolationism. You've got to work on motivating a team using technology like Zoom. All those things put a lot of strain on managers. So this program, the timing is perfect. And that's why, Lori, I love that you embrace this so much, because we were talking about how do we get tools to our clients? How do we get tools out to the organizations? This will give you some incredible insight into doing supportive coaching, how to look for and support behavior and productive movements. So that's how Module 1's structured. Module 2 is a little bit different. It's more about communicating with a team if someone does have mental health concerns and issues. There's also some dynamics around reaching out to the person that maybe is off. Maybe they're not on disability, maybe they are, maybe they're just taking a little bit of a break, but communication with that individual has to be very strategic. Module 2 will help with that. And then number 3 is actually developing leadership practices to expand how you support mental health within the workplace. So what this will do for you as leaders or managers and leaders within your companies, it gives you new tools in your toolbox. So you can get through this opportunity and thrive and help the employees where they need it. So that's why this has been created. That's why this is brilliant in terms of timing. And Lori, I'm thrilled that we're able to talk about it or bring it out to this group. And I know you've got, I think something like close to 40 people have already enrolled, which is tremendous. So I'm going to take a breath and see if anybody has any questions about that.
The uptake has been fantastic for teams. So we presently have 6 spots left available on the Tuesday program, and we have 10 spots left available on the Thursday program. So, you know, Steve and Jordan and Sonia, that if you haven't registered, go ahead and register. I'd love to have you there. It's a great teams approach. But we're coming up to Mental Health Day on October 10th. Chris, can you give us a little bit of background on how the program was started? Give us a little bit of history on why and what makes it unique.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm sure everybody on the call is pretty familiar with Bell Let's Talk Day and some of the mental health initiatives that Bell has been doing over the last couple of years. And the program was actually developed with Bell Canada, Queen's University, and Morneau Shepell. And it was targeted towards people leaders, obviously, and with the emphasis on mental health and sort of filling that gap in the toolbox that Rob was talking about earlier, and equipping the people managers to have the correct tools to deal with issues or problems that might arise in the workplace. And then again, to be able to deal with issues and problems that they might not be able to see, because obviously mental health is something you can't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. But Lori, as you know, after taking the course and sort of the emphasis on Module 1 is giving your managers the tools to sort of identify and recognize what's going on and sort of getting to the bottom of things, whether it's a decrease in performance or a decrease in social activity or pretty specific things to look out for. And that was really the whole idea behind starting the Queen's Mental Health, and it's been incredibly successful since then. And I just want to say too, Rod, on your point about the Queen's Mental Health Index, is that as well from a workplace learning point of view, which is where I'm coming from in the part of the business that I work for, obviously things, in-house programs so mostly just in-house, in-person workshops, we obviously saw a significant decrease in those because they had to be canceled due to COVID. But we saw a huge uptake in companies training their people leaders with the tools that they needed to be able to manage teams virtually, as well as manage the mental health of their teams virtually, which is why we've sort of put so much emphasis on Queen's Mental Health this year and trying to get it to everybody and sort of coming up with these creative solutions to get it to Lori and make sure that as many people as possible have the opportunity to get trained up in this, because we do think it is important and it will help the overall mental health of the workforces.
It's amazing how many people think that, EAP doesn't apply to their teams. I loved taking the course. One of the hardest things about the sessions were the teams, right? Where you were broken into and when I'm talking into small breakout rooms, I'm talking small, like you're usually 3, maybe 4 people per room. Each of you have an assigned role and you can't deviate from that. So sometimes you're the employee, sometimes you're the team lead, and sometimes you're the fly in the ointment, you know, and it's all fine to say, okay, well, yeah, we're going to do that, until you're in the moment and you realize there's somebody on the other side with an issue and you have to deal with that issue. I found that incredibly powerful, and certainly was really, really an interesting way of learning, a better way of learning, I will say. But I'm still getting, on the broker front, when I'm just talking to other brokers, people will say things like, and I'll direct this to you, Rod, because you're more the statistician, is they still say, well, there's really no concrete evidence that an EAP program does help a company. And I'm calling BS to that. I mean, the numbers state quite clearly, if you can early intervention and coach. What's your response on that?
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, you know, we all heard about soft skills or soft stats that, you know, we can't quite link to things. We know definitively now that the big thing that an EAP supports is what we call presenteeism, and Chris kind of hit on it earlier. So it's that invisible challenge where someone is actually showing up for work, but they've got some issues going on. Maybe they've got a legal issue, a relationship problem, an issue with manager. Those things are blocking their ability to be productive. So we can put metrics around that. And I actually have some reports, and I can send one out after this call for you, Lori, and share it with the folks on the call here. We've studied over 25,000 people that have taken EAPs, and we have the stats around it. So it's very, very, very easily can see the correlation between productivity increase because absenteeism is improved, presenteeism is improved, and those dynamics have a direct relationship to how well that employee is doing at work. So we've got the stats. It's no longer is it sort of nebulous. You know, we're not quite sure. You're going to get somewhere between $5 and $8 return for every dollar put into an EAP program. And the same thing for this kind of training and learning. You know, I'll share with you, you know, something that I look for. I always look for. There's a saying that Tony Robbins says, that success leaves clues, and I firmly believe that. You know, and I have someone in our organization, and she's in her late 60s. She's actually an executive assistant to a team of our executives. And I was on a call with her recently, and I thought to myself, you know, I wonder what it's like for her. You know, she's a bit older. She's probably 15, 18 years older than me. And every call that she has, she brings enthusiasm and passion, and she's learning. She says to me, I really, Rod, I want to understand this. And I thought, I just love this. This is fantastic. This is the kind of dynamic you have to bring in as a manager. We have to keep learning and growing, whether you're a 25-year-old manager, whether you're a 65-year-old manager, an 80-year-old manager, we can all learn. And in this program, one of the things I love the most is communication. So part of the coaching is how to communicate with empathy and how to listen to find out what's really going on with the individuals. It's almost a mindfulness type approach on the communication side. So it's not.
Yeah, that was really
I love that
breakthrough, yeah. Right? Like to know that, you know, it's not to be sympathetic, it's to be empathetic.
Yes.
And understanding the difference. That was my failure on module 3, just so you know.
I'll give you those points to pass. Check mark. So Lori, you're right. I mean, we now have the hard numbers, and you know what I mean? Instinctively, everyone on the call, if you're leading teams or if you're impacting people, you have a pretty good sense of what you need to do. You know, there's an old saying that common sense is not so common, but the bottom line is we need training. It doesn't matter how intuitive we think we are, we still have to have training. And right now, right, we've never faced this. No one has faced a pandemic at the size and scope that we have just gone through. You will tell your grandkids about it, and their grandkids will be talking about it. It's unbelievable. So that's
Well,
why we
it's
want you to have
a
this.
marker in time. We've actually passed a marker in time.
Yes.
The interesting thing too is, and I say this from a benefits perspective, is,
Yeah.
benefits should never be a set it and leave it, but most especially the component of an EAP program is never a set it and leave it and expect that somebody knows how to access it. When you put in it, and that is really prominent in this leadership program, is to say that you can't just walk around and say, hey, look, you're not drinking your coffee, right? Or you're not having your water, so you need to call an EAP. It's not like that. It's how to communicate effectively. It's spotting the markers to say, how do I bring this up in a team meeting so it's equitable for everybody, empathetic. I always had a saying, nobody cries alone, but in this course, I realized, no, they have to cry alone. I can just be empathetic for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the dynamic around looking for the opportunity to learn and to grow in this. We have to find the tools and the solutions to help our folks that work with, and it helps us too. Like for me, I've got some mental health issues with some folks in my family, and after I took the program, because my knowledge base now was different, and I could take a look at symptoms that I had not identified before and put them together. Now the way that I interact is different, and I'm different on a level of support. So these are the kind of things that it's not just, we want to help you not just as a leader, but as a human being, so that you can actually bring more to the world and help yourself too. And something I wanted to share, we struggle with this because of COVID, and we can look at all the racial diversity and wildfires, and it's very easy to go into the darkness right now. As a leader, we have to be the light. One of the positive things that COVID has brought out, and I'd love to hear some other ideas from other people, but one thing that COVID has done on a positive basis is that it has lowered the stigma around mental health. It's improved that tremendously, so more people are getting help sooner. And that for us is fantastic. This is what keeps us up at night. How do we get more people, more help? And COVID has actually helped us with that. Thus, these kind of opportunities, people like Lori that want to bring the light out there, saying, hey, this is some great tools. So there has been some positive things, but we have to embrace it.
Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot. My HSA has such a great team. And I know during the last few months, you've had a lot of people working remotely. And what's been your number one challenge with your teams and that remoteness over what it was prior to?
For us, like as a company, we went remote right away. Being a tech company, that's the easy part. That wasn't hard. But our office environment was very, like I could show you, but it's very close. Like we're all kind of crammed into a room. So we were very much, we're almost family-like, and you knew what everyone was going on, good, bad, or indifferent. And you could tell, like there's visual cues, I think, that you could tell if someone was going through a rough patch or anything like that. But we went to completely, work from home, and, we did weekly Zooms, and, initially early on we'd have, let's have a drink on Friday type thing. A lot of us have little kids and stuff like that we're now homeschooling. So we're all kind of running around trying to get the job done, teach our kids, and do everything. So we were super worried about culture because we thought we'd lose that a bit. But now it's kind of now that we're in kind of somewhat of a normal phase, we just don't see each other. So that's our biggest problem. So we struggle with how do we see each other through Zoom, or figure out how we can communicate with each other. And as an employer, my concern is that, like, my level of knowing what an employee's going through, or where, I'm so detached right now. Like, I don't know. And the mental health side of COVID, I feel it, right? Because it's like, if my kids get kicked out of school and have to do homeschooling again, I'm terrified of that, because it's really hard to, we hated teaching our kids the curriculum, and my wife's a high school teacher, but like the little teaching your own kid, we both, we hated it. Our kids loved school. By the end of, last semester, they were kind of saying, we don't like school anymore. So we were mortified. And so we were super happy when they went back. But then our biggest fear is like, if I have to juggle my HSA and the kids coming home, that's me personally. I can only imagine what other people in our company are feeling. And I'm not going to know. Like, that's my biggest fears. I have no idea how to approach it. So that's why I like the idea. And that's what kind of brought me, I'm an educational nerd. I like that stuff too. But now that I'm learning a little bit more, it's kind of like how to look for cues and new approaches, especially in this, weird new normal. You need tools, right? Tools in the toolbox, which I totally get.
So you need to pick your date, whether it's the Tuesday or the Thursday session, and you and Tim come on in and take this, because Chris, I'm going to hand this over to you. He makes an excellent point, and the leadership program just completely highlights and explodes with ideas on how to do that. Can you delve into that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. And I actually, listening to sort of the conversation that was going on before, this was a point I was going to make anyways, but this really sort of pushes me towards it. Personally myself, before I took the course, the last couple of years, I definitely prided myself on, taking care of my own mental health, and definitely checking in on sort of friends and family and people that I'm close to, or specifically a couple friends I know that struggle with a couple things. So I thought that this course was going to be like very easy. I would know everything I had to know, and that it would be very straightforward for me. But Lori, I know you and I talked about this the other, I guess a couple of weeks ago now too, is that there's a certain situation, I can't remember if it's module 1 or module 2. Lori, you might know because you took it recently, where the facilitator actually gets you to role play. And there's different roles that you have to role play, whether it's an employee dealing with a mental health problem, or if it's an employer reaching out and having that conversation. And I really thought like that was something I'd be able to do no problem, but it's quite an uncomfortable situation when you're thrust into this, and there's a specific script, and there's issues that come up that are really, really hard to deal with. And it's just amazing sort of seeing how the facilitator will tweak what you're doing, or maybe give you suggestions on how to just approach something just the slightest way differently, but it makes a huge difference to the conversation and where it goes, and making sure that employee gets the support they do need. So that's probably my personal favorite takeaway from the Queen's Mental Health, is the actual role-playing situations and being able to make those, I'm gonna call them mistakes. Make the mistakes that you're gonna make in a role-playing situation, so that when you go to have that conversation with an employee, you're gonna make the right decisions and say things the right way to have the best possible scenario come out of it. So I think that kind of hits on that. That's my main tool.
The third person in the room, when you go and you do the role playing, to Steve, to your point, is they have a whole section where it's, you're a team leader, and you need to check up on your team during the pandemic. How are you going to do that effectively? What questions should you ask to maintain that family-like culture that you had when you were in person? So there is actually, they do pinpoint that. But the third person in the room, or the fourth person in the room, depending on the section, is always the critiquer. And you think, okay, well, that's going to be okay because, I'm the critiquer, but it's not, because you're putting yourself in that situation as well. Like, it's really phenomenal stuff. Jordan, Mike has done such a great job during this time, the last 6 months, of keeping his team culture intact. And I know he's such a huge proponent of the employee assistance programs, and he lives it. He lives that culture. Can you share with us in the room a couple of just your main points that have really stuck out in the last 6 months of working remotely with a team leader who works this program?
Sure, yeah. So I think one of the biggest things about EAP is the communication. and letting employees know that it's there. And we've had some sessions where our EAP provider for BBD actually comes in and they do like, here's how you access it, here's what the experience is like. I think that part is very critical so that when employees feel the need to get in touch, they know how that piece works. The other thing to Rod's point earlier, I think he said, a lot of the stigma has kind of been reduced about, using these kinds of services. And I think because of that, people are actually, when they do reach out to an EAP, they're finding that it is very helpful and resourceful. And I myself, I've actually reached out multiple times and I've had some guidance from EAP, and I am more than happy to share those experiences with people that I know may be going through a difficult time. And so I think that kind of helps with like the stigma reduction piece. People are getting the help they need, and they're speaking to it confidently because they've had such a positive experience with it. So that helps too. The other piece with this, there actually has been a positive for us as far as just keeping our culture intact. So I would argue that our culture has actually grown a little bit stronger, and most specifically with like our partnership development team. So pre-COVID, we have a BC sales team and we have an Eastern sales team. And before COVID, we would kind of meet up on a virtual call every couple months, every 3 months to kind of check in, see how things are going. But now we're doing it every week. So we do like a quick 30-minute Google Hangout similar to this every Wednesday at 2 p.m. And all of us get on, and it's just a quick, how's everyone doing? Any updates? And I feel like that's actually brought us closer together as like one unified team, as opposed to like a East and West split, because that was kind of a struggle we had before. And now we just feel like one big team. So yeah, it's all about, I kind of look at it as like, it's all perspective. So you could look at this and be like, oh, it's such a terrible situation, but you could also kind of look at all the positives that have come from it, and I guess learning and growth opportunities, and definitely having a leader that believes in a strong culture certainly helps too.
Well, it all comes down at the end of the day to productivity. If we have productive staff, we're all in business to make money. So productive staff that are mentally healthy are going to create wealth. That's it. They're going to create wealth for themselves. They're going to create wealth for the organization. This is always the fastest 30 minutes of the week. I'm going to open it up here for any questions for those that might have been a little shy, but it's a small room. So if you have questions, I'm going to give Rod the last word to answer your questions. Anything? Sonia McGee, Sonia Persa, Marion?
No, I think we're okay. I've got Kim in the room with me now. She was just listening to this as well. And no, it's just interesting to listen to the stories here, because with us, it was, we have still, like, we're in healthcare and so forth. So we've actually been all still at work, just doing all the precautions that need to be done with social distancing and masking and all the other stuff. But it's interesting to listen to, I think it was Steve, about the connections and stuff like that, because here, well, which Lori knows, is that we are quite family oriented, quite family based here, on how we all get along and so forth. So a lot of us, there always is, and being in healthcare, a lot of hugging and getting together for drinks, or, friendships, relationships and all that. So some of that is where we've noticed, you start to see how that does affect when you can't do those things. Probably a little more like even with people's moods, a little more snappier, or, stuff like that, or people that, in particular might be really afraid about getting COVID because they're quite compromised and what they're feeling about that type of stuff.
And
so
how to address it.
Stories. Sorry?
And how to address it.
And how, right? Yeah, exactly, and what to offer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it's just interesting to hear, sort of, is there anything else, Kim, like that you would add in? Awesome. But yeah, so the program, it does, but it's interesting to hear about the cues, like when you're talking about the modules, because you're right, there's it is silent. Mental illness can be quite silent, but there is cues. And that's what I'm starting to see a little bit, thinking, okay, wow, this really has affected, even like for me, I was even telling Kim that even though I've been very fortunate to come to work every day and it hasn't affected me financially, which I'm really grateful for, and all of us are here, but you do notice, like even family gatherings, or if you're a real social person outside of work, that you aren't getting together, or if you are, it's not like you can hug or shake hands, or it's all distant stuff, right? And then when I first came out, I realized, oh my God, how uptight I'd gotten, like so stressed, because you have to keep everything in mind and be careful of this and that you do start, you know, as things calm down and things are coming now like a new normal, you realize, holy man, that really did, you know, affect me, even how I was feeling about certain things, or being just more, yeah, I don't know, maybe a little more snappy, or I don't know what to really even say. But, you know, you start to see in yourself saying, wow, I didn't really think it affected me as much because I'm still working, so forth. But yeah, there is a silent factor to it where you don't even realize it till it, you know, something happens, right?
It's Anya, it's affected everyone, and you've hit it right on the head. It's almost like we've all gone through a post-traumatic stress situation.
Yeah.
And even, you know, like I've discussed with people who have master level degree in clinical counseling, and they themselves, for the first 3 months of COVID, they were stunned and didn't quite know how to handle it. So this has been traumatic for everyone. So as a leader, as taking care of people, this will help yourself and your employees, and we hope you embrace it, because it's a really wonderful program. I've taken it, I love it. Lori's done it. Chris, of course, has done it as well. And you know, I want to just throw a thank you to Steve. You said some powerful things, Steve. And one thing you said that really stood out to me is, I don't know how to handle these situations. That's what a leader does. A leader says, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out and get the answers so I can help. So I love that. But thank you, Steve, for saying that.
Well, that's a great last word. I love that. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
No, I just said I aim to please. I'm glad to.
Thank you for that. Lots I don't know too.
Like myself, learning never stops. Like that's the one thing about being in that leadership position too, is learning never stops. Exactly. So I thank everybody for coming out today. I hope that if you're on the fence about taking the leadership program, that you will take advantage of it. What do we have? A $1,200 savings over what you would pay if you were doing it individually. So take advantage of me and my generosity, and I'll deal with the financial manager of the company later. So it's November 3rd, which is the Tuesday, and we're doing it a full day. So from 9 to 5 Mountain Time. So if you're, you know, in another time zone, then, you know, adjust accordingly. Or the Thursday, the same time, so 9 to 5. We've 6 spots left open on Tuesday, and we have 10 spots left open on Thursday. If you know teams or leaders that should take advantage of me, bring them in, because at the end of the day, I'm an employee group benefit specialist, and I want to meet them anyway. Right? So it's a great opportunity for me to meet new people. It's a great opportunity for my clients, my centers of influence, and the people I love most, to give them the tools to help them succeed. So thanks so much for coming out today. I really appreciate it, and hope you'll come again.